What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the In the Pocket podcast. We're sorry we left you guys hanging last week. But Mother's Day, having wives and things of that nature, it just didn't work out for us. Okay, we apologize. We're sorry. We got caught outside the pocket. That's not something that we wanted you guys to do, but here we are. Anyway, I'm your host, SOU to the P. Always joined with my brother, Mike, co-host. Dude, what have you been doing up to this last week?
Man, been running around like crazy. Happy belated Mother's Day to everybody that's checking out the podcast, so you and your loved ones. But in the school, man, running around, performances, all that stuff. So I'm glad we got to lock in and knock this out.
Man, listen, I'm telling you, I feel like I've been to the school enough that somebody has me on their attendance roster at this very moment in time. Like, I'm pretty sure my wife is going to get a phone call about how I missed class today. Anyway, man, there's a lot that happened over the last week, but I'm actually kind of glad that we got to sit this one out and kind of just let the news and stuff come to us. So wanted to start with just some news that happened since the last time we saw y'all, since the last time we talked to y'all. Some new kingmakers in the NFL, right? Baltimore Ravens, King Henry, he finally gets his bag. It's 2 years, $30 million with $25 million guaranteed. I gotta tell you, man, I'm happy for him. I'm happy for any person that's getting their bag, but I'm really happy for Derrick Henry. I know he had wanted a contract that has some years on it, and I know people are saying, hey, it's just 2 years, but I think it's a smart play for them, and it shows the fact that the majority of it is guaranteed. I think it's a good showing of faith from the Baltimore Ravens organization, showing how they feel about him, and I think they know what a difference he made on their roster last year. And I think that also speaks to protecting Lamar for the future, right? Because when you have a back like Derrick there, you don't have to rely on Lamar using his legs as much, which is something that you want your quarterback to stay in the pocket. You don't want him running around. You don't want your, $100 million, $200 million asset putting himself in danger for no reason. So I really like that move from the Baltimore Ravens. Mike, where you stand with this?
I love it, and I think it's a good resurgence from running backs getting paid. Obviously, Saquon got paid about the week before, Henry getting paid, Jonathan Taylor getting paid a few years ago, maybe not to this level, but he was over $10 million. So I love it, man, because if you think about it, like besides the quarterback and the center, the person who touches the ball or has the most effect on a passing game and running game is obviously a running back, right? They do a lot in pass protection. Derrick Henry, they were like, we're only going to run him 10 to 15 times a game until they started running them and they realized that they got King Henry on their team. So I think the money is obviously well earned, one of the best running backs in NFL history. So definitely locks him in there for a few more years. And they got a good title window now. You might as well lock up the players in that.
Yeah, man, they got to come up with a better game plan when it comes to playoff time and, let this man do what he does. Something else that happened that I thought was wild, last episode, we talked about what the heck is Dallas doing at wide receiver in terms of weapon, because it was CeeDee Lamb all by his lonesome, and then I couldn't tell you who the next man on that roster was. But apparently, they heard us talking because they went and acquired the services of one George Pickens from the Pittsburgh Steelers. The trade goes down for a George Pickens and a 2027 six-rounder head to Dallas in exchange for a third-round pick in 2026 and a fifth-round pick in 2027. So there goes that help that we were talking about, that, Dak was going to need some more weapons to throw to besides CeeDee Lamb. Now CeeDee Lamb's not going to be the only person getting a target. And I like Pickens' ability to create in his routes, and I like his ability to just go after the ball. He's definitely, I think, one of the more aggressive receivers in the league. So I think it's a good pairing in Dallas. I don't think it's going to help them win a Super Bowl, but it'll definitely draw some attention off of CD.
Yeah, I like the move mainly for Pittsburgh because obviously they weren't going to pay George Pickens after paying DK. You can't have two receivers making that much money unless you don't have a defense and you're the Bengals. But saying that to say, like, he could have walked away in the compensatory pick formula. They could have got anywhere from a third to a fifth or sixth, depending on what they do. So instead of a hypothetical, they got a third that's going to be higher than any comp third, right? Because it's Dallas's actual third round pick. They got a fifth as well, and they gave up George Pickens in a sixth. The only thing I would say, man, is if like Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL with dealing with personalities, managing the team. squeezing all the juice out of whatever players he has. And I would not be the GM buying with Mike Tomlin selling outside of receivers. Realistically, I think Emmanuel Sanders is the only one they let go that went and had a better career after he left Pittsburgh, right? AB did, but it was like a headache everywhere he was after he left Pittsburgh. So I think it's a good move immediately for Dallas. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that. They still got to pay Micah, right? They just paid Dak. They paid CD. So I don't know how they're going to make that fit. I think that's an expensive 1 year rental, worst case, like a third and a sixth for a 1 year rental. But if they can find a way to lock him up and George Pickens can settle in, and I think a good thing about it there is like he's clearly the number two. Like as talented as he is, he knows CD's the top 5, top 6 receiver. So I think that'll make that a little bit easier as opposed to he was by far the best receiver before DK got there in Pittsburgh. So that could help out with some of those issues, and I think he'll get open. He's not going to get the number of passes he got in Pittsburgh, but I think he'll have some big opportunities with a lot of teams double teaming CD.
Yeah, man. Like I said, it's a good immediate fit, but I like you. I had some questions about it because I was like, this man is looking for a contract. He's going to be looking to get paid. You haven't locked up arguably the biggest star on your roster, and we still don't know what that's going to look like. You had the retirement of, Zach Martin after a long time. So, they got to go ahead and then start investing in their offensive line. And it looked like they did that with some of the draft and stuff. But, Jerry Jones does this weird thing where he won't pay a person, then ends up paying above market rates for them. And then it inevitably ends up hamstringing the team in other areas and aspects where they have to go cheap. I think people keep forgetting that, Trayvon Diggs is still on this is on this team, and he's going to be up for a contract sooner rather than later. And I would like to think that that's a person that they don't want to let get outside the building. But you never know what Jerry's going to do, man. Like at the end of the day, the only thing that's guaranteed with Jerry is that he's going to do whatever the heck he wants to do. So, Cowboys, it's not your year. Last piece of news, and why this is another thing where we're like, hey, I don't know what's happening with this guy. Farewell to Derek Carr. He is calling it a career after suffering an injury to his rotator on his throwing shoulder. After extensive medical treatments and therapies and consultations and things of that nature, is discovered that there were degenerative changes to his rotator cuff, and he just made the decision that it's time to hang up the cleats, man. Derek Carr finishes his NFL career with just a little bit over 41,000 career passing yards, 257 touchdowns, and 112 interceptions. I don't know the plan at quarterback in New Orleans now. I think if you're Kellen Moore, the hope was definitely when you took the job that you're going to get Derek Carr for at least a year, right? You may not know what you want to do with him, but you were hoping, hey, I'm going to go get a quarterback from this class, right? It's maybe somebody that gets to sit behind Derek that can at least learn how to be a professional, or maybe I don't have to play him right away, right? I can hold off on playing him until like week 4 or 5. Depending on how Derek is when he comes back. But now it's like, man, what is the plan? Who is going to be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, I think, again, congratulations to Derek Carr, generational bag getter, career earnings of over $200 million, which we always love players getting paid. One playoff game I want to say he went to, and I think he lost the playoff game he went to, 77-94 career record. But, he has some tough teams. He has some injuries he battled through, and nobody wants to go out, in a way that they're down, they're injured, et cetera. But saying that to say, I think he did a phenomenal job working with the Saints. They really scratched each other's back. The Saints could have tried to get that $10 million recouped, but they gave him the bonus, but they did it. And because they didn't do that, they gave him that extra $10 million. He retired, and, the Saints have been at cap hell perpetually for the last probably 10, 12 years. This is going to free them up $25, $30 million this year and a little bit more than that next year. So he did a phenomenal favor for them as they're looking to rebuild. My opinion, with looking at that situation, Tyler Shough probably has obviously Kellen Moore said it's going to be open competition, et cetera. I would assume Tyler Shough has the leg up. It's really going to be a battle between him and Spencer Rattler, in my opinion. Spencer Rattler didn't look like a starting quarterback last year, but he does have a year of experience that he learned from film, etc. I really think this is a move for them, again, for the future. They have that cap room now, but they have a little bit of an older defense. They need to get younger at a bunch of different places, and next year's quarterback draft is, much more vaunted potentially than this year. So I think worst case scenario, they don't have a good year. They're top 5. They have a top 5 pick. They're going to be in position to get themselves a foundational quarterback. Best situation, Tyler Shuck turns out to be. I wasn't very high on him, and no shade or anything like that. I just wasn't as high on him. He reminds me a lot of Brandon Weeden, man. He was in college for 7 years, etc. A lot of injuries. He had one good season. So if he can stay healthy and he is what they think he is, best case scenario for them, you got your franchise quarterback now. You got more cap space next year. People are going to be attracted to go to New Orleans with the history there, the dome they have, etc. So again, I think, definitely shout out to Derek Carr for the career he had, especially with the Saints, because I was happy. Well, actually, especially with the Raiders. When he was with the Raiders, we were winning a lot of games against the Raiders as a Broncos fan. But saying that to say, man, I definitely he came into the NFL with high expectations, early second round pick, and ended up being an absolute beast. Him and Amari Cooper, I believe, came out the same year, that same draft. They took Amari Cooper the first round, him in the second round, and he definitely played better than a lot of second round draft picks did. Made a great career. A phenomenal guy off the field. You hear nothing but great things about that. But I think he did a phenomenal job of working with them. A lot of times players don't work with teams. Teams definitely don't always look over players. So, definitely shout out to him for a good career. Wish him nothing but success. And then very interested in that quarterback battle. They have to bring a vet in, I would imagine, to help compete with that. They have 2 players that have been on the roster for a year. The oldest person in the quarterback room now is the rookie they just drafted. So it's going to be a little bit interesting dynamic, but we'll see what they do, as training camp rolls around.
Yeah, I think something to keep an eye on. Some 3 names that I have to watch for the Saints right now is obviously Aaron Rodgers, because they've been talking that, hey, him and the Steelers, we still don't know what's going on with their, apparently they love each other, but for some reason they just won't commit. And who even knows if Aaron wants to play football this year? I'm not wholly convinced that he wants to play football this year. And then I also have look for a reunion between the Saints and Jameis Winston, just because it's a very, very crowded quarterback room up there in New York. I think Russell is going to get the starting job, and I think their intent is to have Jackson Dart, steady under him and probably take over for him midway through the season, depending on how his performance is or how he stays healthy. But I think another name to look out for, and it'll be interesting to see what happens considering they're in division. But we still don't know what Atlanta is going to do with Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins has made it plain that he would prefer to be out of Atlanta, and he wants to go to a place where he can compete for the starting job. And I think, again, if you're Kellen Moore, you came down there taking the job with a plan in mind for how you were going to possibly take a rookie this year and get somebody to work behind a vet. And now your rookie, in terms of age, is the vet, like you pointed out. You got to get people that just know how to be professionals and can play, the position at a certain level. And I think Kirk Cousins kind of fits the mold. And you got to imagine that you're going to be able to get him for, something fairly decent, being that the Falcons paid him a lot of guaranteed money. And that's not something that they can just ship off their books. So, they're going to have to, because they've already paying basically his salary and stuff like that, you're going to have to give him something decent. But I could see him going for like a third next year and maybe a 4th the year after. But people may say, hey, that's too much for Kirk Cousins. But you got to understand, guys, the NFL is a bottom line business, and you have to win some games. And I don't know if I'm a New Orleans Saints fan, if I'm a season ticket holder, there's nothing in that quarterback room that sells me on the idea that we're going to go win football games this year currently.
I agree. I think a big thing is they're not a quarterback away from winning, right? They have a lot of holes in their roster. They're old. So I don't see them making if I was Aaron Rodgers, if you had the choice to go to Pittsburgh, DK Metcalf, Caleb Johnson that they just drafted from Iowa, etc. Like, that's a fire move. That's a much better situation weapon-wise. Obviously, Chris Olave is a dog down there. Shaheed's a dog down there at receiver, but Alvin Kamara, but like they have a better line in Pittsburgh. They have a better head coach in Pittsburgh, or a proven head coach at least. I think if those were your choices, I would probably go to Pittsburgh. Plus, Pittsburgh plays the Jets week 1. That's probably a revenge game he wants to get. Kirk Cousins, I couldn't see them making that move when they just got that cap relief because they would have to pay. I don't think Kirk Cousins would go for more than like a 4th or 5th, honestly, at this point. But the Falcons did say if they do entertain a trade, the team is going to have to take on some of his pay some of his salary, right? A lot of times teams will trade somebody. If they really want them out, they'll pay the salary. They're not in a cap position that they can trade him and keep paying the salary. So New Orleans are going to be able to not pay as much to get him because they're going to actually have to pay part of that contract. But I don't think that's going to be a move that sets them up long term, especially when they drafted, according to a lot of pundits, like the most pro-ready quarterback with Tyler Shuck in this draft. So I think their plan is to roll ahead with that, man. Maybe get one vet in there just so you can get in and out of the huddle quicker, somebody that knows that offense. But Kellen Moore was a quarterback in the NFL for a long time, a good backup in the quarterback. So you've heard nothing but good things about what he does. And he showed in Philly he wants to run the ball, which is nothing but a quarterback's friend. They took a new offensive lineman as well. So, I'm interested. We'll see what they do. But he said they're going to have an open competition. In my opinion, it looks like it's going to be a 2-man race. But Tyler Shuck probably the pole position. But we'll see what Spencer Rattler does for sure.
Cool. Well, like you said, hey, farewell to Derek Carr, man. We wish him nothing but the best in this next chapter of life. Glad that he's able to kind of go out on his turn before he puts himself into a state where he can't really enjoy life after football. And I imagine he'll probably still be around football. I mean, heck, his brother had a significantly less decorated career, and he's still around football. So I imagine this isn't the last time that we will see or hear from Derek Carr. Something else that happened this week, and I thought is probably one of the more interesting scenarios that I've seen when it comes to a contract situation or dispute, right, is whatever is going on in Cincinnati with Trey Hendrickson. He had a almost 30-minute interview with the media this week, and I thought he made some strong points, man, and it did not paint a really pretty picture of the front office in Cincinnati. There could be varying opinions on, Trey Hendrickson and what people think that he is worth. I think that it's worth noting that Trey Hendrickson started out his career as a special teamer. Right. And he really ended up making a name for himself in Cincinnati. And I don't think what he's asking for is unreasonable. But as we get further and further into this offseason and closer to the start of the season, it just doesn't feel like the Bengals feel the same way about him as he does about the Bengals. And what did they try to say during COVID? There was a bunch of people that were quietly quitting. Well, I don't think that Trey Hendrickson is quietly quitting the Bengals. I think the Bengals are quietly quitting him. The conversation, like I said, again, his interview that he did with the media earlier this week was really, really telling, saying that there had been an extreme lack of communication between him and the organization and about what was going on. And, he thought, hey, we'll wait and we'll see what happens with the draft. He doesn't seem to be harboring any kind of resentment for his teammates, for Joe Burrow, for T. Higgins, for Jamar Chase getting paid. And the media tried to bait him into that a couple of different times during the course of this interview. And he's like, hey, are you frustrated by those guys? You see all that money going towards them and you're just kind of being patient, waiting for your turn. Does that kind of frustrate you seeing them get paid before you? And I thought he did a great job deflecting that and, bigging up his teammates and telling, hey, they deserve every single dollar that they've gotten. They got the best quarterback in the world. And he said if he was building an organization, he'd probably do the same thing. He'd probably prioritize, wide receivers and a quarterback over a defensive end. But I thought the one comment that there was a couple comments in there, but one of the comments that I want to start off with that kind of stuck out to me is towards the end of the interview, they were asking, hey, would you be willing to talk to the organization and maybe take a lighter deal? And he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, I know what I'm worth. And I know what I'm worth. And I'm not going to apologize for the defensive end market being what the defensive end market is.
Yeah, no, I agree. My whole thing is a lot of times you hear it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes, right? And
Mhm.
the Bengals defense was absolutely terrible with him. But here's the reality, right? Um, he's led the league in sacks the last 2 years total, right? So if you combine sacks over the last 2 years, he got Myles Garrett beat, he got TJ Watt beat. He's number one in sacks the last 2 years total, right? So led the league in sacks outright last year, was top three the year before, which ended up putting him in number one the last 2 years. So I think pass rushers are making $40 million. If the Bengals had the opportunity to pay him last year, could have probably got him for the high 20s. It's in the 40s now. Now, I'm sure he'll give them a little bit of a hometown discount, but the biggest thing he was talking about is they're offering him 2 years, and he says he needs at least three, right? They wanted a 2-year deal, which really is a 1-year deal. They can get out the second year, a 3-year deal. Even a 4-year deal is really a 3-year deal because that last you can usually get out of. He wants a little bit more security, and I feel like since he's been with the Bengals, he's been nothing but an absolute nightmare. And that would be a great thing. But you got to look at it from their perspective as well, right? This is how I'd be thinking if I was the Bengals, right? We got Trey Henderson, doubts to hold out potentially. Shamar Stewart, our first round draft pick, still hasn't signed his deal. He's not showing up to rookie camp. He probably won't be at OTAs if they're not giving him more guarantees, etc. And their secondary was bad last year. You know, DJ Turner was a bright spot for them. He actually overplayed, I think, some of the position he had, but they don't have a lot of depth in that secondary. And their line is really not good outside of Trey Hendrickson, especially with their first round draft pick not showing up. Now, they added some reinforcements on defense, but the reason they didn't make the playoffs is because of their defense. So missing your best defensive player is not going to help you. Not going to help you make the playoffs, right? And if it comes down to a third year, they should give it to him. You know, historically, they don't pay people. They're like soup on Madden, right? They don't pay players over 30. But he kind of has shown to be that he's earned to be the exception to that role. And every contract isn't just about past performance, and that's what players think a lot about what I did. But a lot of times, teams are looking at what are you going to be able to do in the next years. But the reality is, with the draft picks they made, a little bit of reinforcements they did on their line, Trey Hendrickson's going to be the thing that makes that defense really run. Like, and if Shamar Stewart can develop, and really Trey Hendrickson being there is going to aid in Shamar
Stewart's development.
Right, he's playing in opposite Trey Hendrickson most likely, or rotating in with Joseph Asai. So anyway, I think again, man, it sucks. I think that he should get paid, and I'm just not a fan of teams waiting to pay players, man. Like, I'm glad the Broncos signed Pat Surtain, the highest paid cornerback at the time he got signed, but now he's the fourth highest paid cornerback because we didn't wait till this year to sign him, right? He got his bag. It was the biggest bag in the NFL at that time at that position, really in NFL history, but then he got beat like a week later, right? So if you pay your team, if you play your cornerstone players, which if I told you to name outside of the Bengals fans, if I told you to name like three starters on their defense outside of Trey Hendrickson, most people are going to be scratching their head, right? The reality is they got some players, but he's the captain of that defense. He makes that team go. So I think he absolutely earned his bag. And like you said, Ben, like, he's not asking for anything unreasonable. It's not his fault that they waited. And the market jumped by $12 to $15 million. And again, I don't think he's asking for top of the market.
No.
If you look at like TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, they're better run defenders for sure. But you can make a serious argument he's on par with him as far as pass rushing goes. So
yeah, and I don't think there was nothing in his interview that made me think that he's wanting to reset the market. I don't even think that he's wanting to be paid at the top of the market. I think based on the comments that he's making, it sounds like he just wants to be compensated in the range that where it's at now, where market value says that he's at. He doesn't want to be the guy to reset anything, and he's not saying pay me like I'm the best, but you have to pay me what market value is. And right now, Cincinnati is saying that they don't want to pay a market value. I just think it's an ugly situation because it's a guy that clearly has fallen in love with the city. That's clearly fallen in love with an organization that has done good things, great things with the organization, right? Helped get them into that Super Bowl and played well during its entirety. And you think about them losing Sam Hubbard to retirement over this last offseason. Like, this defense is not getting better. Like you said, him not being there is not going to help them defensively in any way, shape, or form. And this really feels like a team that only has one side of the ball. This doesn't seem like a recipe for success, especially in a very physical, highly competitive AFC North. you're going to have to deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, you know, even if they can't put up points, they're going to beat you up defensively. Like, they always have a really, really solid defense. The Browns, if they can figure out the quarterback situation, the Browns are good on both sides of the ball. And then you have the Ravens that have been at the top of the division for the last few years, and we already know what they're about. I don't like these things where they're also trying to like paint Trey Hendrickson into a corner like he's some kind of a villain for this, for asking what your value is. My fear for him at this particular point in time is that the narrative is going to become louder than what the actual facts of the matter are, and that he is going to get painted as this problem child, even though he's never been anywhere that he's been. Like, the whole time that he was in Cincinnati, he never really spoke to the media, and he's even made comments of that. He's like, you know, I'm not a guy that gets up here after the games unless we're winning and talking. He's like, because I'm a very emotional guy. I'm a very emotional player. Like, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. If we lose a game, I'm not going to be the person that you want to put in front of a microphone. So he's been relatively quiet during this time, and he's let his play speak for himself. But the fact that he felt he needed to get out publicly to the media and tell his side of things, I think it speaks to a lot of what he was saying, that he feels like he's being disrespected out here, and he feels like the organization is not acting in good faith. I thought something else that he said, that he's like, you know, he tries to remember, like, that this is a business at the end of the day. And, you know, he tries not to take things personally. He's like, but it's kind of hard to feel like things aren't personal, especially when we haven't even we're not even at the point in time where they're going to be expected to report to, you know, mandatory camp. And Zach Taylor is texting him saying, hey, if you don't report, we're going to be fining you.
Yeah, I think that was unnecessary that early. Yeah. They've created a hostile situation. In my opinion, I don't think the narrative will change on him, or the outlook, especially from fans. The media there loves. If you could tell during that interview, they were really giving him like law ball, you know, questions to be able to like dunk on the organization. In my opinion, you can tell his teammates say nothing but good things about him. If I was the Bengals, what I would have done is, realistically, what's easier to replace a number 2 pass catcher who is, you know, high number. He's the best number 2 pass catcher in the NFL.
He's the number 1 on most any other team in the NFL.
But what's easier to replace, number 2 receiver when you got Jamar Chase, arguably the best receiver already in the NFL, or the sack leader over the last 2 years? My answer would be it's easier to replace a number 2. I would have potentially traded T. Higgins, got Trey Hendrickson his deal, drafted a receiver, or signed somebody for $10 million or something like that less, because Joe Burrow's your quarterback, and Josh Allen's kind of showed us, like, you don't have to have a big name receiver to have elite production, right? He won an MVP without big name receivers necessarily. So
questionable MVP.
Well, I mean, he won it, so I can't disagree. Lamar was balling out, but saying that to say, man, like, when you look at that division, they're going to be able to score with anybody. Like, all these other teams are built around defense; they'll be able to score. But I'm not convinced just by changing the defensive coordinator with the players they have, especially with their best defensive player potentially missing time, that they're going to be better on defense. The only way they would be better on defense if Trey Hendrickson wasn't there is if they traded him, got some value back, took some of that potential cap space and added a few vets that can kind of help them immediately, and then Stewart develop into an absolute beast at the other end. But, you know, they didn't just lose one. They lost Sam Hubbard, the other starter, and so you're not having to just replace Trey Hendrickson. You're having to replace 2 starters. If something happens, again, they feel they did that with one, but you got to get him in the building, right? You got to get the rookie in the 100%. Building. So they're in a situation, man. They don't have a starting defensive end if Trey Hendrickson's not in that building, and Stewart's not in that building, and it has phenomenal development because they jumped him based off of traits. So I just feel like, man, like, they got to do something, pay that man or trade that man. Like, there's plenty of teams, and this is the thing, just like with Matt Stafford and the Rams said, hey, you can go test your value. He saw what the market was, right? But the thing with Matt Stafford is the Rams, this is the big difference. The Rams said, we feel like he'll take a team-friendly deal because he doesn't want to inconvenience his family and move them. We know he loves LA. He's won a Super Bowl here, and we know LA loves him. So we can trust that he'll go test the market, but they're not going to disrespect him in the payments. They still paid him very well, right? The Bengals did that with Trey Hendrickson, and he saw what his value was worth, and all it did is made him double down because teams were willing to give up some draft picks. I heard like a second was reported or something like that because they were going to have to pay him. But getting a second back for a player that you got that was really a special teamer when you first signed him that turned into that, and freeing up that cap room potentially. So, I mean, I think at this point we're so late in the game, they should pay this man. And get their defense together, because if he's there, they have the potential to be a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion, with the offense they have. If Stewart develops like he needs to, that secondary takes another year of development under this new scheme. They have the potential to be in a Super Bowl conversation. Realistically, they've made it there before with Joe Burrow, right? But saying that to say without him there, they might have a tough time making the playoffs.
Yeah, and I heard what he said during the interview, but I'm watching the situation unfold, and this isn't like this just went down this week, right? We've been hearing whispers and shades of this from his camp all off season. Is this a relationship that can be repaired at this point? Because I know for me, when I'm at work, right, when stuff is staying business, we can always walk some stuff back. Also, too, right, you give me enough money, like I'll stick it out. But once you start getting personal, or it gets to a point where I feel that it's being personal, that you're attacking, my integrity, my character, my work ethic, like it now all of a sudden becomes about more than just the money. Like now it's like, oh, you don't respect me, and I don't know if as a man I want to be in a place where I'm not being respected. I don't know at this point, can it truly be walked back? And I know people are going to argue, yeah, you can walk it back, because look at Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett said he'd never play for the Cleveland Browns again, but all of a sudden you give him $40 million a year, and yeah, you can do that. But we all know Cincinnati is not going to pay him that kind of money.
And from what we've been hearing, like you bring up a great point, but for what we've been hearing, he's not asking for that. He's just asking for that third year. So I think this is something simple that can be repaired. They'll get this man his bag. If he, in my opinion, I don't know, I'm not in the negotiations. Obviously, clearly, he's not even in negotiations. The team hasn't reached out. But if he got 3 years, $85 million, $75 million guaranteed, like I think that's a reasonable deal for him. For the production he's put up, but he doesn't have to inconvenience funds at the move. He still gets to stay with that team. He's not taking $120 million over 3 years, right? So even if it's $90 million over 3 years, right, it's less than the market was. It gives him his 3 years, and it allows him to build, because the year you resign somebody, it frees you up some cap.
Yeah,
and they will make a move at the trade deadline, etc. If they feel like they're missing a piece. So again, man, I think it does nothing good for them to not have Trey Hendrickson in that building. I would make it work, man. I would make it work.
Yeah, I feel like the smart thing would be to make it work, because right now the strategy that the Bengals are employing for this upcoming season is the best defense is a really, really phenomenal offense. It's a bold strategy. Obviously, we'll see if it pays out. But let's just assume that this thing is done, right, and that the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson are headed for divorce. Where are some likely landing spots that you could see for him, with some places that you think that, like, realistically, not the place that you would like to see him, but realistically teams that may reach out and try to acquire his services?
Teams that come to mind could be the Vikings potentially, right? So it's somebody that's not even in the same conference. They had a good record last year, but they did reinforce their defensive line, mainly at D tackle. But I think having a pass rusher like that could take them over the top. Really, every team in the NFC South realistically still needs a pass rusher. Some of them did address that, like the Falcons adjusted with 2 picks. But if he went to the Falcons, right, think about how that team would look. The Saints now have some money that they could actually pay him for 3 years. He could go back to the Saints, and that would give them their defense has always been feisty, always been pretty tough. Last year, their defense wasn't the best. They had some injuries and stuff like that. But him and Cam Jordan will be there a year. Plus, they drafted another rookie defensive end down there. Carolina is a good place, I think, man. I can see him going to Carolina with Avera Ezero as defensive coordinator. They bring a lot of pressure. So in my brain, like, those teams did address some of it, but all those teams, those 3 teams I just named, have the cap room to pay him potentially. The Falcons would be a little bit tougher unless they got rid of Kirk Cousins, but they have the space for him, and they absolutely have the need for him, and he can go there and be successful. You know what I'm saying? So I would see him with one of those teams. I don't see them trading him in the AFC, but if they do, the team that I could think of on the top of my head, I saw some, but when all season gets kind of slow, you see a million different trades. Somebody was like, the Broncos could trade Zach Allen in the 4th for. I was like, I don't like that. Zach Allen had the most pressures. He had the most pressures in the NFL last year. but I could see him going to a place like the Jets. The Jets.
The Jets got I don't get me wrong, and it's nothing against the Jets. I think the Jets have like playmakers everywhere on defense. And don't get me wrong, you can always use another playmaker on defense.
100%.
But when I look at the AFC and I think like places where I think there's a literal need, I don't think the Jets need him. I think he would absolutely add to some stuff that they already have there. But I look at like the Indianapolis Colts. I think he could plug into the system down there. And work really, really well. I think even if you want to stay in the same division, I think the Tennessee Titans, because somebody please tell me what the heck their defensive line looks like right now. Like
Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah. So get him some help. It's funny that you mentioned Minnesota because I had thought about Minnesota too. But the other place that was in the NFC North that I thought about him potentially going and maybe they kick the tires to see, how much would it cost to acquire his services for the next, 2 years, because maybe he'll take a 2-year deal on a different team so he's playing football this year and getting paid. Detroit, man, like we saw what the Detroit defense looked like when Aiden Hutchinson went down.
Right.
And we know that it sounds like he was well on his way to recovery to the point where had they made a Super Bowl appearance, that it sounded like he was going to be able to go. Now we don't know, how effective he would have been or if he realistically would have been able to see the field. But it sounds like he's made progress. He's on track to be back for the rest of the season. We don't know what he's going to look like because sometimes coming off of those injuries, it takes a year. Even when you're good to go, it just takes a year to start trusting your body to do the things that you've naturally been able to do, right? To do it without that mental block in the back of your mind saying, hey, if I move, like what's going to happen? Is it going to tear? Is it going to do this? To play with that unbridled passion. But I know that they were looking at somebody to partner with Aiden Hutchinson. And, they missed out on the Joey Bosa sweepstakes. They missed out on Myles Garrett because he stayed home. They missed out on Max Crosby because he ended up staying home. And you just look at the available pass rushers and people that are going to move the needle that are just nasty footballers. Like I think Trey Hendrickson fits that mold, and he's a lunch pail type of guy, right? Like he's not gonna be one of these guys that's out here riling the media up. He's gonna take care of business on the field. He takes care of business off the field. He just really seems like a guy that Dan Campbell would get along with well and would kind of fit into that culture that Detroit's been putting together up there. Now, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't want to see that because I think that absolutely is going to make them, even more a contender than they already are. But I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think they do have the cap space to kind of pull that off.
That was a fit in my mind. The only reason I didn't bring them up is because they have to pay Aiden Hutchinson this year. Like this is, they got to pay him this year. So even coming off the injury, I don't see how they would pay him, pay Hendrickson, right? And they got some young talent that they do have to pay, right? They did pay Jonathan Taylor before, et cetera. But Pittman has, they signed him a few years ago. He has a deal coming up again. So they have some.
Well, is this Hutch's fourth year?
Yeah.
So they could technically exercise this 5th-year option and
and a lot of teams do that, but they also know like you're going to say they exercise this 5th-year option, but you re-sign them. You don't need that 5th year, or after the 5th year is when it kicks in. You need that cap relief. So it just doesn't necessarily it'll overlap for a year. Will cap wise can make it work really, but I'm not sure how it would work in the 2nd and 3rd year. And
I guess that just depends on what is Detroit's philosophy. Like, do they think their Super Bowl window is wider than what other people think? Because I think here's the thing: it's not like the NBA where you can kind of like you can see a dynasty and know like, hey, these guys are going to have a shot to go for this. Like the NFL has done a great job of parity, and it's up and down, and like you really kind of. We don't see these dynasties happen often, right? I think the last dynasty that we've seen is arguably the Kansas City Chiefs, and people could say they are not a dynasty. But like, it's kind of hard to predict from season to season what's going to happen now. And, you never know in this NFL, you never know what injuries are going to take people out. It just seems like even though the game has gotten less physical due to like rule changes and stuff like that, I just don't remember growing up and seeing so many players with so many season-ending injuries like we are seeing right now. So I think if you're Detroit, if I'm Detroit, I want to capitalize on what I absolutely have right now. where I've got a quarterback that has played in the Super Bowl, that's shown the ability to win in the postseason. I've got a two-headed monster back there at running back. I have arguably the number one or the number two offensive line in the league. I've got a really, really nasty defense with an ascending secondary. Like, I think the time is now. You've got good weapons. He's got good weapons and stuff like that. I think the time is now. Like, when are you going to have another chance to really do this? And this is the closest that you've been in decades to this thing. I would just be willing to push more chips to the table if I'm Detroit. And maybe it just feels desperate. But again, the name of the game is to win the trophies, not improve Madden ratings. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be really interesting to see where Trey Hendrickson is playing football this year. I hope for him, because I believe it's truly what he wants. I hope that he gets to remain in Cincinnati. And they need it. If you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, you should be hoping that Trey Hendrickson is going to stay in Cincinnati, because outside of him, what do you guys really got going on with defense? So we'll see what Who Dey Nation ends up doing. But the last thing that I want to talk about before we get out of here today, Mike, is schedule release. And the schedule release is always a fun time of year, right? Because there are 32 teams that believe they won the Super Bowl, on schedule release day. Like, there's fans of every single organization that have printed out that schedule, and they've put W's all up and down it, even if it's a team that they haven't beaten in the last decade, right? Like, everybody's undefeated. Everybody's going to the Super Bowl this time of year. But one of my favorite parts of the schedule release tradition that's happened in recent years is the schedule release videos. And we got some fire ones. And I got to say, man, for the last few years, regardless of how I personally feel about the organization, I really think that the Chargers social media team has done an excellent job. And this year, I think they did some really, really cool things with theirs too, with the Minecraft thing. The Indianapolis Colts, bro.
Had the best one.
The Indianapolis Colts too with the Minecraft. By the way, there's a lot of Minecraft stuff that was happening this year. Like, allegedly the Jets had a Minecraft video too, but they just chose not to do. But that just goes to show that Minecraft is a lot more popular than even I give it credit for, and that way more people enjoyed that movie than I did. But even so, man, like, I want to talk about the Indianapolis Colts video, because that thing was wild. Like, they took it down off their official account, but as anybody that lives in this modern era knows, that if it's on the internet, then it lives forever.
Right.
So where there's a will, there's a way you can watch it. So thanks to my good brother here, I was able to watch the Indianapolis Colts video right off the bat. Just a violation, just an absolute violation with Tyreek Hill as a Dolphin swimming, getting pulled over by the Coast Guard. Like, whoever creative social media team came up with this, like, they were unhinged for the whole video.
That the Colts video looked like they said, "Hey, Soup, we're gonna give you creative control. You do whatever you want to." They were out of pocket, so I loved it though. Like, I by far think it was the best one of the ones I've seen so far. I haven't seen every single one yet, but I'll give a shout out to the Chargers, because they're consistently great. I know you hate the Chargers because they share y'all building or whatever for $1. But they are consistently, at the top of the league. I think they've done the best job overall. But the Colts video this year, they were in their absolute bag, man. They had the Tyreek Hill thing you mentioned. They had Ian Rappaport, Jordan Schultz with the Seattle thing and fighting. They had like the pipes busting in Pittsburgh with the miners, etc. They had a bunch of different things, right? I love how creative teams are doing. Now I'll go ahead and give a not shout out to my team, and this is what I'm gonna say. So we need to go hire somebody, whoever that was from Indy. We need to take them. We need to hire one of the interns from the Chargers. Ours always look like we're throwing it out to like an average age of 50-something years old. We had the people riding sheeps and all kinds of. It wasn't great, man. Like, it was not great. I think the Rams was fire, bro. I sent you Rams, like Brenda Song.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like, that dry humor, Brenda Song absolutely killed y'all's. That was one of the top 5 ones that I've seen so far. But very creative time, and that is really like those social media team Super Bowl for the year. Realistically, it's really the schedule release is their Super Bowl. And I think some teams are definitely executed this year. There's still a few franchises like Pittsburgh, Denver, etc. that have a little bit of work to do in that regard, but definitely excited to see some of these matchups this year.
Well, look, man, like aside from the schedule release videos, let's talk about some of the actual schedules, man. I feel like I need to put this PSA out to everybody because like I hear it every single year. And if you don't hear it every single year, then you don't have enough football fans in your life. And I would encourage you to get some football fans in your life. But strength of schedule this time of year does not mean anything. It's based off of last year's results. The teams that played last year do not exist anymore. Okay. They are new rosters, new constructions, new coaches, new coordinators. There's a whole lot of things that are changing, and just these players are aging. Some of them are getting better, some of them are deteriorating. Like it's just there's a whole bunch of different circumstances. So even when you see a team and you're like, oh, they have the easiest strength of schedule, they have to capitalize, like, bro, you have to play. These are still NFL teams. Everybody on these rosters is getting paid. And outside of the Miami Dolphins, who I don't know what the heck they're doing with roster wise, like I think every other team is here to compete. So, I've already seen it because obviously I'm on Rams Twitter. Everybody's already talking about the San Francisco 49ers and their ease of schedule. And I'm like, brother, like, it's going to be hard. Like, people act like the 49ers are just going to be back like that this year. And I think, we still have questions at the offensive line. We still don't know what kind of condition CMC's coming back in. We don't know what kind of condition Trent Williams is coming back in. We don't know what Brandon Ayuk is going to come back looking like in. Is Ricky Pearsall going to continue to develop? If Demarcus Robinson's played 2 great years in LA, is he going to be just as good down in the Bay? Like, there's so many questions around this team. Like, yeah, it looks on paper, it looks like, oh, that's a dub, that's a dub, that's a dub, that's a dub. But like, this could end up being a really, really tough schedule. What I can say is they have an unprecedented schedule where they do not play any team that is coming off of a bye. Every team that they play this year is going to be like in the midst of their season or a couple games removed from their bye. So I thought that was interesting, especially when you juxtapose their schedule with the New York Giants schedule. And I was like, man, either they know something about the Giants that we don't, or somebody hates the Giants for real, for real.
Yeah, and I'll kind of touch on. I just had theirs up, the Giants schedule, man. Like, you're 100% right. I mean, you talked about that as well. Like, you're comparing these teams to last year, but it's kind of hard to say that the Giants have a fair schedule this year for being where they drafted at, right? They got the Jets, the Battle of New York, right? They got the Patriots. So you can say, all right, they start off kind of okay. Then they got the Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers, Saints, then Eagles, then Broncos, then Eagles again, then Niners, then Bears, then Packers, then Lions, Pats again, Commanders, Vikings, Raiders, Cowboys. That schedule. Now, here's what I can tell you: we're comparing to last year, but hey, Vikings had the best record in their team in their division last year, and they're going to be in contention for a playoff spot this year. The Commanders they are better this year as far as roster wise than they were last year. So I would only expect for them to ascend. They got them twice, obviously, in division. The Lions are the Lions. I don't even got to say much about that, right? They got to play the Packers, right? And the Packers are always competitive. Their defense is absolutely phenomenal.
They drafted a receiver in the first round, so who knows what we're going to get this year?
Right? Like, they might be something serious. The Bears, man, I'm high on the Bears roster. We'll talk about this really more next week.
We've been talking about it for like the last 3 episodes. What they've done this offseason is nothing to be sneezed at, especially if Caleb can be who we think Caleb is.
Right. The Eagles, man, and then the Giants like play the Broncos again. So again, like they have a tough. They have teams that a lot of their schedule, over 50% of their schedule, made the playoffs last year. Had almost a 60% winning percentage. They have a tough schedule for a team that has a lot of questions on offense, a lot of questions on defense. Their defensive line, they're going to be set up pretty well, but I don't know who they pissed off. I don't know who they pissed off to get the schedule they got this year.
Yeah, somebody is clearly not happy with Russell Wilson. I feel like somebody needs to check to see if Future became, Roger Goodell for a second. Let me just put this out there too. For the love of God, stop trying to ruin my holidays by putting the Cowboys on television. They're on TV for Christmas and Thanksgiving this year. And look, NFL, I get it. You guys say football is family, and I get that the message that you're really, really trying to send is, hey, the game isn't important. Your family and your loved ones is what's important. We want to make sure that we're giving you the opportunity to spend time with the people that are closest to you. That's why we keep putting the Cowboys on during the holidays. But frankly, I'm sick of it, and I would like to unwrap a better gift than that, please.
Hey, man, I get what you're saying. However, that is the most valuable sports franchise in the world, right? They always bring eyes. They're always sold out. They got Cowboys fans all over the place. Again, you know how we both feel mutually about it, but the NFL also said, hey, we're a multi-billion-dollar business, so why not have the most valuable franchise play at the most prime time?
I just want to believe in myself the way that Cowboys fans believe in their team.
No, I mean, I feel that, man. Everybody needs somebody to believe in them like the Cowboys fans believe in the Cowboys. This is our year. But also, and not just those two games, but also the kickoff banner ceremony game with the Eagles is another huge thing, right?
It is.
So they're going to be seeing the Eagles get their second ring in the last 7 years, and they haven't got one since me and you were like in elementary school.
Oh man.
So I think maybe that can inspire them or something like that. But again, man, like the Cowboys have a pretty tough schedule this year as well, especially with a new coach, some question marks and people coming back from injuries. And I do want to take a second to talk about maybe a few of these matchups.
Sure.
You, bro, to see what your thoughts are on them. One that I'm very curious to see, especially depending on what this team does at quarterback. But I think the Packers have always been a competitive team since Matt LaFleur has been there. They have a game against in Week 8 against the Steelers potentially, right? So the Steelers defense, the new look offense with DK, etc. That's one that I'm interested in seeing, man. It's not the highest one on my list, but I'm going to toss a few at you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that game? Is that something that intrigues you that you would look in and see?
I am, because again, the Steelers are a team that fascinates me this year anyway, because I don't know what they're doing at quarterback. And I'm curious to see with the they got Will Howard. They picked up Will Howard, and again, I there's a part of me that just believes that if Aaron Rodgers is playing football, it's going to be in Pittsburgh, and that's who we're going to be watching. But there's also a part of me that feels like I've watched enough Mike Tomlin football to know that he is stubborn to a point, and he will absolutely trot Mason Rudolph out there, just unashamedly, like put him out there, and that's really nasty work. I also want to see Jordan Love, man, because he had such a high, and then I think last year was kind of just a little wonky for him. But I do love them going wide receiver in the first round, and it sends a clear message that they want to try to maximize whatever it is that they have with Jordan Love, and I think it sends a message to a really messy receiver room last year where they had kind of like a lot of off the field kind of crap going on over there with their wide receiver room. And I think this is a message: hey, you guys need to shape up, or we'll come in here and we'll replace you. But they're always been competitive, and like you said, they've been playing winning football since LaFleur took over as that. So I think it's going to be a good matchup, especially in the middle of the season. I think both of those teams will probably still be really in contention at that point in time. So I'm looking forward to it.
The Steelers will be in contention for 9-8 according to the Colts release video this year, but
Colts should worry about themselves.
Another game, and that people are going to say, "Hey, Mike, you're biased," but in my opinion, bro, like me and you watch football. This was the most exciting game in the NFL last year, in my opinion. Was the Broncos and the Bengals, right? That overtime matchup. Mims coming on, so we get to actually face the Bengals Week 4 early in the season. Hopefully, not a lot of injuries on either side, etc. Hopefully Trey Hendrickson's back in there so we can, get them at full strength. But that's a game that, 30-24 in overtime last year that the Bengals pulled it off. Now we really saved their seeding. It doesn't sound like it was as explosive as it actually was. Like the game looked like it was a 50-52 kind of game.
Yeah, you had to be there
watching it, but you had to see it. But that's a game that I'm looking forward to, man, to see what this new Broncos defense does. Arguably the top defense in the NFL this year, going up against arguably the top offense in the NFL this year with their balanced run game and passing attack. So what are your thoughts on that one, man?
I don't know if it's going to be the top offense this year, but I think most explosive. There's a difference between being the best versus being the most explosive. I think they have a good chance of playing Joe Burrow this year. You know, and Joe being as close to 100% as he can be. I'm actually really excited to see it. I want to see what happens with Bo Nix, and does he take another step forward, or is this a sophomore slump? But I like the idea of Sean Payton with the quarterback that he chose in year 2 with their system. Especially, it looks like you guys are getting really, really physical, just judging by the style of players that you guys took. It's not going to be, you know, the finesse Broncos that we've grown used to seeing when it comes to offense. I think this is going to be a Broncos team that's going to get real physical in the trenches. They're going to obviously want to run the ball a lot. And then you've got, like I said, Bo Nix he's got a lot of snaps under center thanks to his college experience. Yeah, I like the matchup a lot. And I hope that we get another, you know, nail biter. I know being a fan of either one of those teams, that's not what you want. You want your team to blow the other team out. But as a guy that just enjoys watching good competitive football going back and forth, I'd love to see that matchup, especially, you know, hopefully both of them that early in the season, we get to see both teams at full strength as opposed to being hamstringed by injuries.
100%. Another game and this just is because me and you're both high on this team, but the Chicago Bears in Week 6 against the Washington Commanders in Washington.
I'm glad you said that, because I was like, if you're not my brother if you're not having this game on your list.
Right. No, 100%. The Chicago Bears and Commanders. You have the top 2 draft picks in the NFL last year. Two players. Obviously, the rookie offensive player of the year. One that everybody thought would have that title now with the real offense. And interesting thing. Side note, quickly. All these reports coming out about Caleb Williams not wanting to go to Chicago, the concerns he had, etc., and really found out that he was right. If you look at it, like, they weren't showing him how to watch film, weren't game planning properly. They gave him film, they didn't tell him what to watch, what to look for, what tendencies, etc. They didn't do cut ups like a normal team would do. Quarterbacks generally do go there to die, but he believed in Brian Poles' vision, and they end up having a much better roster, much more complete roster this year. But that is probably one of the most exciting matchups that I'm looking forward to. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, first I want to address the Caleb Williams stuff, and I get it. Caleb Williams isn't everybody's cup of tea, and I'm not saying that I'm a Caleb Williams fan. Okay, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that I'm a fan. I enjoy what he does on the football field. I don't know the man as an individual, so I can't make any judgment calls there. But this is not the first time that we've heard Caleb Williams said this, Caleb Williams said that. Somebody show me this is a guy that we're talking about was worth nearly $10 million in college. This is a prominent figure in society. I don't know, unless you're working for the government, which he is not. He works for the NFL. I don't know of any prominent figure in society, any public figure that makes those kind of comments about a potential organization that they either could work for or do work for, and nobody has it documented anywhere. It's all hearsay. Show it to me. Where is the interview? It didn't exist when we were leading up to his draft process, where he flat out said, "Hey, I'm not going to Chicago. I'm not going to play." Where is it? I'm sick and I'm tired of it, because I think the kid gets unnecessarily hated on, and I think they try to invent all of these things to kind of paint him into somebody that he isn't. It rubs me the wrong way, bro. Like, it irritates me. I know it doesn't have anything to do with the game, but I had to get that off my chest. I think it's annoying, bro. Like, show me the receipts or it didn't happen. Show me the receipts or it didn't happen.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I think the thing that's a little bit different about this one is one, Caleb Williams was trying to be professional, right? And keep it. And he actually gave Ryan Poles and the ownership group to sell him on. She left it like, I'm sorry, I just had a pop up, but they sold him on their vision for the franchise, right? Mm-hmm. Not just like, hey, this current coaching staff, which again, they did not. Their defense played relatively well. Their offense has been a train wreck. Quarterbacks they produced a Pope before a 4,000-yard passer suit. So I do get those concerns.
We're not going to glaze over what you just said.
Yeah, it's true though, man.
We're not going to glaze over that.
The first American Pope from Chicago, but they still haven't had a 4,000-yard passer. That'll change this year. But saying that to say, I think this one was a little more. He covered it. His dad was really his spokesman on it. He was trying to be as professional as possible. He got some advice from John Elway, et cetera. It sounds like the Manning family that he should attack the city, et cetera, if he doesn't want to go there. And Caleb Williams, just for his credit, he said he doesn't want to do that. And he ended up toughing it out there. He was on his back the whole time. People couldn't get open, even though he has weapons. So again, I think this year that is going to be completely opposite of Ben Johnson's a tenth of what he's hyped up to be, which I believe he's going to be as advertised. But that's a matchup that I'm really looking forward to see, man. It's going to
let me talk about the matchup because I just went off on my little diatribe. I'm absolutely looking forward to the matchup, to the duel, right? Because this was supposed to be the matchup last year, right? And it just didn't live up to the billing. I like everything that the Bears have done this offseason. And I think the Commanders, if you're a Commanders fan, you have reasons to be hopeful. Like, this organization as a whole is trending in the right direction, right? New stadium, the coach is settled in, the new ownership group is settled in.
Scandals.
Debo might stay away from a buffet this offseason and actually hit the gym. You got Bobby Wagner coming back, and I think anytime you've got Bobby leading the center of your defense, I think you're in good shape. And I don't think that Jaden is going to have a sophomore slump. I don't think he's going to be as prolific as he was maybe his first season, but I don't think that's going to be due to him falling off. I think that's going to be due to the fact that 32 NFL teams now have a full season of tape on him, and they're going to be able to better game plan for it. But I also think that he's, him being a second-year player in the NFL, there's tricks in his bag that we didn't get to see last year that we're going to see, and they're going to work out new wrinkles and stuff in this offense. I really like this matchup. It's a matchup that, in my mind, should favor the Chicago Bears if we're just looking at the rosters on paper. If we're looking at the rosters on paper and we're going by who the head coaches are, I think this should be favored for the Bears. But I'm not saying it's a blowout. We've seen what the Commanders could do, and I think the Commanders got better objectively on paper from what they had on their roster last year. So I'm definitely hyped to see this matchup. There's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of buzz leading up to it. And I think, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels are going to be forever linked to each other just because of how hyped one of them was coming out of college and versus what the actual talk about the talent was. I think a lot of people had Caleb Williams being the number one quarterback in the draft early. But I think as we got closer to the draft, I know for me, I had Jaden Daniels as my number one quarterback in that draft. And I would have loved to see Jaden Daniels for the Rams. There was no way on God's green earth that was going to happen. But I would have been over the moon for it. Instead, our guy Ike ended up getting him for the Commanders. So maybe we'll see him in a few years in a different jersey. Somebody else to trade for him so that way they can actually do some winning for real. But I'm hyped for the matchup nonetheless.
Yeah, man. So I'm gonna go through three more, right? One that I really like. This is going to be a battle, especially with these teams potentially being healthy. But Detroit Lions in Week 11 at the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. What are your thoughts on that matchup, man? I have a lot of things to say, but what are your thoughts on that one?
I don't think it's going to be a good day for the Lions. I don't think it's going to be a good day for the Lions. And I get it, right? Both teams are arguably going to be healthy, but here's the biggest difference going into this matchup. It's you have two new coordinators. I'm only replacing my offensive coordinator. That's what it's going to boil down to. I think the defense at every single level for Philadelphia is better than Detroit's defense. And I think their defensive line is so physical and nasty. They can go toe-to-toe with that offensive line in Detroit. And we've seen what Jared Goff looks like under pressure. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs, for as fast as he is, the Sonic and Knuckles approach that they had in Detroit last year, Philadelphia is not the team to play that game with. It's just too much too early. Their best bet, in my opinion, like, you better hope that Philadelphia is still drunk on champagne.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying, man. I think some things that I would vary a little bit, right? We're not picking winners yet. We're going to do a video talking about protected records and some of that stuff. But I think some things will be at the Lions' advantage. One, Aiden Hutchinson by Week 11 will be, he was almost ready to go. They said if they would have made a Super Bowl, Week 11, he should be 100% by then, right? Second thing is Dan Campbell is one of the most underrated coaches of the NFL. You listen to Aaron Glenn, you listen to Ben Johnson talk about how much Dan Campbell's taught them, et cetera. And they've had a plan in place the last 2-3 years to replace coordinators because they knew those two coordinators were going to be highly sought after. So they've been developing talent behind them, et cetera. They've had a plan really to replace coaches, which a lot of organizations don't, but they've had a plan. I think by week 11, we'll know exactly what the Lions are. And I believe that vision is that vision to Dan Campbell. That team plays like the team that he said at that press conference is going to bite your knuckles and bite your calves and bite all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
he's just hungry.
Yeah, they're gonna be a tough team, man. And I know they're gonna be a tough team. I have faith in Dan Campbell, just like I have faith in Nick Sirianni at this point, and that roster Harry Roseman's putting together. So I think that's going to be a phenomenal matchup. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as people might think it's going to be. I think it'll be a little bit more of a defensive battle than probably anticipated because the Lions did bulk up their D tackles, et cetera. They reinforced their linebackers. But yeah, man, I think that's a matchup I love to see. Last two matchups, man. This one, Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills, and this is in week 1. So this is like week 1. This is our Sunday night game to kick off the season. What are your thoughts on that game?
I mean, a heck of a way to start the season. It's definitely going to be must-see TV. Man, wow. It's going to be interesting from the standpoint of, is the Buffalo Bills roster going to be complete at that point in time? Because I mentioned it on our last show. What's happening with James Cook, man? Like, he was a big part of that offense last year, and it doesn't seem like he's tapped in right now because he's trying to get a contract. And, Josh Allen is going to be Josh Allen, but I think people have to realize, like, even though Josh Allen is in his prime, he's closer to the end of the prime than he is the beginning of the prime. And because of the way that he ends up playing ball, right, his unique physical style of playing ball, his ability to throw that cape on every single week is going to diminish every single season. But as far as a week 1 matchup, man, you got to love it. I think it's going to be explosive. I don't think there's going to be a lick of defense there. I think it's all going to be it's going to be a lot of offense. And I hate to say it because I love Lamar, but Lamar tends to do his best work at the beginning of the season.
That's true. No, that's going to be a good matchup. I think those are two perennial Super Bowl contenders. Two of the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL.
To be a Super Bowl contender, you have to get to the Super Bowl.
True, but I think those teams are teams
that champion contenders.
Always going to be in that conversation. Are always going to be in that conversation, right? So I think that's going to be a good matchup, especially early to kick the season off. They're going to have all offseason to plan for that. Definitely excited about that matchup, and I think it's going to be, especially because it's week 1, it's going to be a high-scoring game. Derrick Henry's probably going to run like crazy. Now, again, the Bills did reinforce their D-line, their edges, like, significantly. They're really stacked, that defensive line. That's probably a top 4 defensive line this year with what they did. Bringing in Bosa, right, how they drafted, etc. So I think that's going to be
week 1, so he'll definitely play. He won't be injured.
He will play week 1. We don't know how long he'll play, but
he will play.
He will play, right? The last matchup I want to talk about, week 2, a Super Bowl rematch, the Philadelphia Eagles at Kansas City in week 2. I'll kick this one off so you can kind of close it up as we're into this episode. But I do think the Chiefs have to circle that one, right? Because of how bad they got bullied in the Super Bowl, right? They got some reinforcements back. They got some more of their receivers back. Josh Simmons, hopefully he's healthy enough to play at the beginning of the year. That's going to be a tough place, but they remade their offensive line. How is their line going to hold up against that D-line that is only still the same D-line they had last year, right? Which is ferocious, right?
And they added Jahad Campbell.
Yeah, they added Jahad Campbell, which I don't understand. Like, we talked about this. Like, how does the NFL let the Eagles do this stuff? But saying that to say, man, I'm just interested to see how the Chiefs bounce back. I hope they don't. I hope they lose and just sets a trajectory for a terrible season for them as a Broncos fan. But I do know that they have the best coach in the NFL, in my opinion, in Andy Reid. And I know he's going to have that team ready. Patrick Mahomes is very competitive. Obviously, that team is a competitive team. They've built on championship. So we know that they still want to compete. But what are your thoughts on that Super Bowl rematch in week 2?
I don't like the odds for Kansas City. I mean, you would like to say, hey, Kansas City has that game circled, and let me tell you this: as much as Kansas City has that game circled, Philadelphia has that game circled too. Because I think Philadelphia has a point to prove that it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't because it was late in the season and they maybe didn't have this or that working for them in Kansas City. No. I think this is one of those things where the Philadelphia is out to prove a point. Like, no, we beat you and we're going to continue to beat you. I look at that Philadelphia roster and I said, well, where's the part of their roster that got worse? And it didn't. And Kansas City, while I can't say that the roster got worse, I can't definitively say it got better either. There are a lot of question marks all over the place, from the receiving room to the running back room to the offensive line. Like, there's a lot of question marks all over the place. And that's not question marks like saying, hey, they're going to be bad. It's just question like this, literally unknown quantities. We don't know what's going to happen because they rely so much on a lot of their youth. And just, you have people that were playing that were either injured or they were suspended last year. They're coming back into the fold. Like, what does all of this stuff look like? Now, I think the one benefit for them is that they have, if I'm not mistaken, Kareem Hunt is officially back with the Kansas City Chiefs. Am I still correct in that?
Let me look. I don't remember
that. Because if he is, I think if nothing else, right, they're going to have a stable running game. And I think that is going to be the key to helping them survive against Philadelphia. Is Kareem Hunt with them for an entire offseason, really having a chance for Andy Reid to get creative with what they do in the run game. Patrick Mahomes being at 100%, and just, a couple new wrinkles and stuff like that. And then obviously you've got Kelsey coming back for one more season. Now, he's not the man that he once was, but he's always reliable. And for some reason, he's always finding a way to get open. It should make for a really, really exciting matchup. But I feel very much about that matchup the way that I did about the Super Bowl. Like, the game is not going to be middle of the road. It's going to be one way or the other. It's going to be either Philadelphia is going to kick their doors in, or it's going to be highly competitive back and forth. I don't think there's a scenario where Kansas City is beating the brakes off of Philly.
I don't think there's a scenario where the Chiefs are beating Philly. I'm just interested to see how they're going to bounce back. And again, that's all my hope, because the Chiefs, they've been winning. They figure out how to pull out these games, man. So we definitely know they have that culture, that championship culture. They have that championship pedigree. At the end of the day, they got the best quarterback in the world. So they're always going to be able to be in games. But this was a phenomenal episode. I'm glad we got back on it. I'm glad we got to wrap this up. Definitely excited about it, but I'll let you give us our sign off, man.
Man, listen, again, we appreciate y'all rocking with us through 4 episodes. We apologize for last week not getting it out there, but this one is going to be out there, and we're back on track with week 5 coming next week. So In the Pocket podcast drops every Monday. Minus last week. It drops every single Monday. So please don't get caught outside the pocket. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your cousins, tell your auntie, uncle, nephew, and them. Please subscribe to the podcast. We are working to get the audio stuff out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but we are on YouTube. It's In the Pocket podcast. We appreciate all you guys supporting us. We appreciate the comments and the feedback. Again, the show's going to continue to grow. We just appreciate the love, man. So for Mike, for myself, we'll catch you guys next week. Be good to yourselves.